Hello everyone, hope everyone can hear me. I'm delighted to welcome you to the Royal Academy of Engineering's CAFÉ, which is Connecting Awardees Fostering Engagement. It's a series of events we run throughout the year on topics of special interest to our awardees and alumni. And we're delighted to extend the invitation to you today for those of you who are interested in European funding. I'm Christina Gindi, and I'm Associate Director for our Programs and Awards, helping to cultivate that diverse and talented pipeline of engineers that can tackle societal challenges. I want to thank the panel for attending and be participating today, and especially Camille, who had to come at extremely short notice. Our topic today is European funding, with a specific emphasis on ERC grants. We will have an introduction from our panel, a discussion, Q&A, where we invite questions from you, and then there will be a follow-up networking session in the adjacent rooms where you can continue to discuss the topic. Before we start, the usual housekeeping rules. There are no fire drills, so if you hear a fire alarm, then please follow a staff member who will escort you to the nearest exit. Please also note that the panel discussion and the Q&A will be recorded and will be available on the Academy's website. We're all here because we're interested in engineering and technology partnerships funding that is available through the European Union. We are very keen as an Academy to utilize our networks and the skills, knowledge and experience of our fellows and network in applying for European funding. And I'm delighted today to introduce our panel. Camille Boirin, I think I got that right, EU Project Manager at the University College London. Professor Alex Frangi, Bicentennial Turing Chair in Computational Medicine at the University of Manchester, and Professor Judith Driscoll, Professor of Material Science at the University of Cambridge. So to start, I'd like to ask each of the panel to give a brief introduction, starting with Camille.
Yes, no problem. Hi everyone. So I work at the University College London. I'm part of the European Research and Innovation Office, which is part of the Research and Innovation Services. So I'm on the professional services side of things, and I support academics who are granted EU funding.
Yeah, so my name is Alex Frangi. I'm, as I said, from the University of Manchester, and my experience with European projects started in Spain. So I was for a number of years working in Spain, and I was involved in a number of large integrated projects, both as coordinator and as partners. I also been, last year I got awarded an ERC advance grant, and I can talk a bit about that, and also been involved in evaluation of ERC starting grants and in some other schemes from the European Commission.
Thank you. Judith?
Yep, so similar here to about the different things, different projects I've been involved with the EU, many different projects. Research training networks, integrated projects, FET open projects, Marie Curie projects. I had a Marie Curie grant many years ago, actually, as a young academic. It was called an excellence grant. That was really good. And hosted Marie Curie fellows. And I've had 2 ERC advance grants, one in 2009 and one, I guess it was about 2020. And I also have sat on panels at ERC a lot. So I did panel P7 many years ago, which was information communication technologies. They needed materials knowledge on that panel. So it was mainly electrical engineers, but they had a materials person. And more recently, I've done another panel, and I was just there last week doing that. So, yeah, so a lot of involvement, and I feel very privileged and to have benefited a lot from EU funding. I don't know what I would have done without it, to be honest.
Thank you. I mean, both of you have got experience in applying for a grant, but also from the evaluation side, and we can touch on that later. Camille, I thought it might be helpful as a start if you can give us a general introduction to European funding, the types of European funding.
Yeah, of course. I know we're going to have a particular focus on ERCs today, but there's a whole other range of applications that you can get funding from if you're not already aware. The main funding program of the European Union, for research is called Horizon Europe, and it's made mainly of three pillars. So this is a broad introduction. So first pillar is excellent research. It comprises ERC grants, Marie Curie fellowships. It's not topic related, and it's very much something that you most of the grants that you can get are for a single partner. Then you move on to the second pillar, which is all of your collaborative grants. All of the calls within this pillar are designed by the European Commission to answer some specific objectives identified by the European Union. So they are very topic related and mainly collaborative grants. So that means that you would have to form a consortium to apply for those grants. And then the last pillar focuses on innovation, and these are mainly grants that you would get to support technology to market type of research. That's very broad introduction, as I said. So,
brilliant, thank you. To start us off about ERC grants, Judith and Alex, I'd be interested to hear from you. What are the first steps to consider when you want to apply for an ERC grant? Alex?
So, in my case, so I have also a Royal Academy chair, and what I needed is essentially a grant that was of similar ambition to the Royal Academy chair, but allowed me to do some steps beyond the ones that I can do with the resource that I have in the Royal Academy chair. As you know, most of the funding of the Royal Academy chair is for our own salaries for a longer period of time, but if you actually want to do activity and you need to hire postdocs, so you needed some other sources. And for me, it was an opportunity to have a concentrated effort in a single large grant rather than in a lot of small pockets that would risk that I was losing the vision of what I wanted to do. So, and when you start looking, there are not that many options out there to do that, and ERC Advanced Grant was kind of the right one. The other one is that I think it's quite important. Maybe we will elaborate a bit more as we go today on what I call the idea. For me, an ERC Advanced Grant, what I've seen when I review them and also when I wrote, I had that into account, is usually a simple idea what captures your attention when you're reviewing them. It's a simple thing that you can explain to almost anybody, and is easy to understand, it has a big impact, and is transformative. And I think that's kind of the characteristics that you need to be looking at. And when you write a proposal, what I think is very helpful is it forces you to almost take a 30,000 feet view about your own field and look at things with a perspective that, I'm afraid sometimes the sort of EPSRC, UKRI type of grants tend to be a lot more narrow and focused, and you lose a bit that perspective. So I think that's the other characteristic that I appreciate and that perhaps you need to take into account when you write one.
Okay, so a helicopter view, being able to put you across your project.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's about keeping it very simple, the project, if you want to be successful. I don't know if that's what you want to hear, but I mean, I think it's about how you write a good grant for ERC. So first of all, it's what is the problem you want to solve? What's the general area? What's the problem? And, how are you going to do it? And why are you the right person to do it? And then if you're successful, what's going to come out of it? And making those things really clear. And not, you see a lot of people, they just cram so much stuff in and it's so complicated. And you have to realise the referees at stage one do not have a long time to look at these proposals. They have just over an hour to look at your 5 pages, your first part, because you have 2 parts, B1, B2. The first part gets assessed by the general panel members, and that must be simple and clear cut and not crammed in. A simple story You know, what is the problem, what are you going to do, why are you the person to do it, what are you going to get out of it. And of course there's different sorts of ERC grants, perhaps we'll cover that later, the different sorts and different levels and all that. But it's definitely worth trying for if you have a good track record. You know, your track record is important. They're looking at it less and less these days. It's more about the proposal, but still, you know, you can't ignore it. So you've got to have a decent track record, I would say, and a very good idea. And the idea is not got to be outside your area. It's not going to be like, this is a brilliant idea and something that I don't have experience in. You've got to build up a case and a story. You know, here I've got all this experience in this area, so I'm the right person to solve this problem, and here's the solution, you know. So it's about grantsmanship, really.
You mentioned the difference between applying for different types of grants. Could you elaborate that a bit further?
Yeah, do you want to cover?
Yes, so basically there are three types. Well, there are three levels, and then there are satellite things. Let me explain what I mean. So you have the starting grants, consolidator grants, and advanced grants. And these are depending on how many years of experience you have, of postdoctoral experience you have. And then the satellite things is there is something called a proof of concept, which is kind of you already have an ERC and only those who have an ERC can apply. And it's usually for some spin-off idea from your project that you want to do pre-commercialization or commercialization type of work. And I think there is also another part which is around supporting ERCs to do sort of journalistic versions of the work they do. So it's you know, helping to public communicate science to the public, to the general public. So one thing that for the starting grants, which is the ones I also evaluated, I never wrote one myself, but I evaluated them. I must say that they look at your experience and your track record kind of normalized by your scientific age, right? So I've seen ERCs awarded that had a very, very good idea and a scientist that wasn't super experienced, you know, that didn't have 10 years after their PhD, that was, you know, pretty much a few years after their PhD, but they were in a clear, steady, you know, steep ascent of where they were heading with their career. So if you're at that career stage, you shouldn't be thinking that, well, I need to have tons of publications before I can write one. They're going to be funding probably more your idea than your super track record. But I think what Judith said before about you need to be consistent. Like if you did your thesis in a topic and your first big project is going to be completely different to that, that's going to be challenging. But if you have a few very good publications and you show that there is a build-up, that is normally well received. And I think the panels do a good job in sort of, for instance, I've seen people who have a lot more years of experience, but you see that it's a bit more of the same, their grant, compared to what they did. There is no real sort of inflection points, and those tend to be penalized as well. So it's not just about how many years of postdoctoral experience you have. That's the message.
Also, you know, you do see people with fairly young people with good, really good papers. So they might have come out of a great group and they have a couple of science and nature papers, for instance, and that doesn't help them because unless their proposal is addressing something new, and you know, it's not just more of the same that you've learned in your group, but it's something new, and you come across well at the interview as well, then you won't get funded. We had somebody like that before who seemed so great, but then at the interview, they did get them through to the first round, to the second round, but they weren't very convincing at the interview, even though they had this great, you know, publication track record. Yeah,
well, that's an important point the one you make is you need to show independence. So you can have 3 Nature journal papers, but if it's very clear that that's, you know, inherited by the group where you did your PhD, that won't help you. So you need to show some level of, there are different ways to show it. It could be because you're the senior author, or because it's your first publication in your new academic position, or because you well articulated, you know, the role that is a PhD student that you supervise. There are different ways to show it, but you need to show that this is not just, you know, work in your group where you develop, you started your career. So that's the first level, and then there is the consolidators, which is kind of mid-career. And by the way, there is lots of rules about how you can extend the number of years that each of those are. If you had maternity leave, paternity leaves, all kind of different leaves. So they're quite reasonable in that as well. And then the advanced grants, which is where basically is the competition where beyond a certain scientific age, everybody goes there. And I think something that is very important is to show, I think they emphasize more independence, autonomy, and breakthrough thinking in the early career stages. But in the consolidator and advanced grants, they're looking a lot more about also, is this a transition point in your career? Are you really going above and beyond what has been done in the field? Or is it just a continuity type of grant in your work? And if it's a continuity one, is there some other dimension in which is kind of broadening horizons? It might be that is a continuity in the topic, but a completely new application that where you are having a new impact in a sense.
Okay, so that's really interesting. I think it's a very important point that you raised, you and Judith, about the balance of the track record and the novelty and the interest of the idea and the influx. Is this actually making a change? Camille will come to you, especially on post-award experience. But Judith and Alex, what are your top tips in writing a good application? You mentioned the helicopter view. What else makes a good application?
Less is more.
Always.
Less is more. Don't do beautiful, fancy diagrams just because you think that's what they want to see. Make it very simple. Because if you try to tart it up too much, people will think you're trying to hide something as well. No BS, you know. Try to keep to the clean scientific narrative, what you're trying to solve, how you're going to do it, why are you good, that mantra, you know, it's the right way to go. And you know, write it for the generalist. The B1 must be written for the generalist. And even though we say that and it says it in the guide, people don't do it. Again and again, they don't make it simple, and you have to do that. You have to make it the general picture. A lot of people say, oh, get an expert to read it. I always got my husband to read them because he would actually say, no, I don't really, what's this? You know?
Is he an engineer?
Yeah, but he's not directly in the area.
Okay, so generalist.
So he's a generalist, you know. So that was really good. If I'd have asked my colleagues in my department, they would know more, and so they might assume that everybody else would know that. So actually, I think it's good to get somebody that's a little bit outside, a little bit more outside than your colleagues in your department to read it. But certainly getting advice from people that have been successful about what makes it successful is really important. So, you know, I wasn't successful first time on both of mine. First one I was successful first time. The second one was successful third time. So on the first time of the second round, I was too general on it. And the second time, I think we just voted to leave the EU, so that didn't help. And the third time, I just made it much more focused. I thought this, you know, really more focused and simple. But you know, you do learn by failing, of course. But getting people to read it who have been successful is really useful. So I have actually helped a lot of people. You know, not on the general bit, because I'm not the generalist, but on the grantsmanship, what I think the EU want to hear. So I've actually worked with quite a lot of people to help them to get their grants. I don't know if I helped them, but they were successful, and they might have been anyway, but you know.
Yeah, I think there's a lesson in there about not being afraid of failing, because we talked about this earlier, right? That you don't get it necessarily on the first try, but to persevere.
No, I got it in the second round. I heard that it's very rare that you get it in the first round, so well done, Judy, with the first one.
But then there was third time on the second time, so.
But its average is between 2 and 4, to give you an idea. So the other thing is, so tips. So for me, a few ideas to see how they come across. One is a great opportunity to work with your own team. So I work a lot with my own postdocs and sometimes even students, those that are actually closer to that particular topic, to act as generalists, because my experience is that they provide you orthogonal views about the same problem, and each of them focus on something very different. Even people who are not necessarily academics, like some of the project managers that were in my group, is seeking those angles to look at that. And for instance, I remember one of the colleagues that wasn't an academic was saying, there is a lack of what the so what of this grant is not clear, or how you're going to deal. I read in the criteria that they also look at how interdisciplinarity is built, or what is the impact in terms of dissemination about the work you're doing. And actually all of those things reviewers actually look at. So the more multiple views you have, the better. Some institutions, at least where I was the case, have a mechanism where you put the proposals in a sort of a central bank, and we all agree to share them. And then that helps as well to cross-review, but also to learn from experience from others. The other thing, the other principle that I like is I call it principle of aesthetics, which is that things have a symmetry in life, and that also accounts for grants. So, for instance, the proportion between how much text and formulas and diagrams is important. So a proposal that is just text, it reads like a brick. A proposal that is full of colorful pictures, reads like a whatever.
Cartoon. Not substantive.
Cartoon. So it's about trying to make sure that you have a proper balance between all of those. And also the introduction part, the one where you set the stage about what's going to be different after this grant compared to the sections where you then explain exactly how you're going to do that. Because sometimes you get attacked by, okay, lots of details, but so what? And sometimes it's, okay, I understand where you're trying to go, but exactly how you're going to do that. And you need to answer both of those reviewers, because statistically you will have the guy who looks purely at the detail and the one that looks at the impact, right?
Thanks. I'd like to get Camille's view on your support. You support complex and collaborative projects, and it'd be interesting to hear from you the support that's available for successful applicants post-award and how they can access that.
Yeah, so I can speak from what we do at UCL. So I'm mostly involved in collaborative projects, so that's going to be quite different from an ERC grant. So collaborative projects, successful applicants have a very detailed work plan in their proposal that is divided in work packages. You have specific deliverables to hit at a certain point in the project. So that gives you a very detailed work plan to work towards throughout the lifetime of your project. And what we do at UCL is that we have project management team, which I'm part of, and we support academics in delivering successful project on time, on budget, and with high quality standards, and we help them deliver their objectives and impacts, basically. So how we support them. So what we support them with the right way to support a good monitoring of a collaborative grant is to have a good governance structure in place. So we work very closely with our academics in what we call the project management team. And this is the day-to-day monitoring of the project, where we drive all of the other partners to deliver the project together. So what we do is we provide guidance on all of the EU legal aspects that you have to abide to, because of course you sign a grant agreement with the European Commission once you get your grant. So that means that you have a whole lot of obligations and requirements that you have to meet throughout the lifetime of your project. So we can help with that. We do a lot of budget monitoring. So we help academics monitor how the budget is spent by UCL, but also by other partners, to make sure that we don't run out, of course, and that we spend the money the way it's supposed to be spent, and in accordance with EU cost eligibility rules, which are quite strict, I might add. We also help with the whole monitoring and reporting aspect of the project, because throughout the life of the project you have to report on your activities and your budget spending to the European Commission. So that happens at regular time points of the project. So we help coordinate that with the main coordinator, but also with all of the partners. And one other aspect that we also help with is communication, so internal communication within the consortium, to make sure that there is a good collaboration that is implemented with all of the partners, because sometimes we have consortia that are maybe 20, 25 partners scattered all across Europe. So you have to make sure that there is a good collaborative, atmosphere, and that they all work together towards the same objective. So we can help with that. And this means that you have to organize regular meetings, mostly online, but also in person. That's important. And we also help monitor all of the dissemination part of the project, making sure we are on track with our key performance indicators, and that everything is properly recorded and reported to the European Commission.
To be clear, that support is available for collaborative projects of only.
Yes. So the project management team at UCL that I'm part of, we mostly support projects that are coordinated by UCL and that are collaborative. We've also actually helped with a few ERCs, but mainly collaborative projects, because those are the most challenging and that needs the most admin support, let's say.
Okay, thank you. Time has flown by, as usual, when we have interesting conversations. So I'd like to give the opportunity to the panel to ask some questions. The audience to ask some questions of the panel, sorry. I think there'll be a mic round. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sitting next to the mic, which was useful. Rick Parker. Just to ask you to take a step back, I think coming into this, you assumed a level of knowledge of and understanding of the ERC that I probably don't have. My background was largely in the collaborative research programs that you talked about at the end. I was chairman of the Clean Sky program for 9 years and managed to burn off 4.4 billion euros of European money. But ERC, two questions really. ERC, they're individual grants, are they? You don't need to chase around, find 5 friends from 2 different countries before you can apply. So just fill me in on that. Second point, there used to be a scheme, and I'm going back a few years now, called the Ideas Scheme, which was individual grants for individual postdoc researchers, and they were totally portable. So researchers could apply for these. They were up to 2 million euros. They were quite generous grants. And I seem to remember that the people who won the most grants were actually Italians, but the place they all wanted to do their research was in the UK. David's nodding. He remembers. We're both equally old. So does that still exist, or has it been replaced by something similar? Because that seemed to me a fantastic scheme, and now we can get back on the inside track. It would be good to encourage UK postdocs to go and look at that if it still exists.
So, Alex?
Yeah, so the ERCs in general are fellowships, are single individual, but not all of them. There is one that we didn't mention, which is the Synergy ERC grants. These are, so the typical ERC advanced grant, which is the one with the most money, would be 2.5 million euros plus an extra million on equipment that you can ask that you need to justify. So it's 3.5. But the Synergy grants, I think they are up to 15 million, if I'm not mistaken, between 10 and 15. I don't remember exactly the amount. But they need up to 4 PIs, and those need to be, they don't need to be in different countries. They can be all 4 in the same institution. But the idea is to fund very large, really very large, ambitious, but interdisciplinary collaborations that require essentially 4 stars. Although sometimes there are projects that have 1 or 2 of the 4 people who are in an earlier career stage, and then the argument is, supporting as well, sort of future-proofing as well. I don't know the Ideas program.
Just to say though, those Synergy grants, the success rates are very, very low,
very
right?
small.
2% or something.
Yeah.
It's just like, what's the point in applying?
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
But just to give you an idea, one that I know because was a colleague from mine, I wasn't involved in the grant and it was from a different institution, but was about trying to map the whole connectome of the development brain type of thing. The other ones about the Ideas, I don't know that scheme, but from the way you describe it, it sounds a lot to a combination of the international fellowship schemes from Marie Curie, which is kind of postdoc level. early postdoc, I would say, or the ERC starting grant. So you could apply to an ERC starting grant, being a postdoc, as long as you demonstrate what is your strategy for consolidation in the institution. So those two effectively, I think, do the same job that the one you described.
Is the second one, is that portable?
Yeah. I mean, in fact, all of them are portable. These 3 stages. When I got my ERC, it was just in the middle of the mess with the, coming out of the European. So I was given, essentially, I had to either move to Europe or to resign to the ERC and take the Horizon Warranty Fund from the UK, which is what I got, right? Now, if the Academy can help in that, what is important is those of us, like myself, that were out of the ERC, and then we also have lost the opportunity to apply for proof of concepts and a lot of these other satellite activities that are only for ERCs awardees. So what would be really good is from the UK, we could sort of lobby to actually have the ability that if you went through the review, even if you're funded by the UK, you still can apply, now that we are back in Europe, to those other satellite activities.
Okay. Sorry, I think there was a question from the front.
Thank you. So yeah, research fellow of the Academy. I've got a little bit of experience with EU programs. I got a Marie Curie individual fellowship. And so many questions actually, but I will be focusing on one. So it's definitely, you need to strike the right balance when it comes to the track record, how individual independent you have been, and how you're moving to a new topic, and how you justify that based on publications and other achievements. So for the consolidator grant, which refers to mid-career stage, I would say, which I think it's safe to assume that you may have a few PhD students, postdoctoral researchers, you're starting producing some brilliant research, and obviously they are the first authors on those publications. So as a supervisor of those people, where should my name be in a discipline? Should I be like the second author, so as to promote myself as the collaborator of those people, that I'm really being the inventor of those ideas as I'm demonstrating in the proposal? Or should I be promoting myself as a senior established academic nowadays, leading the group and being the last author of the publications? Really, I've struggled to find this balance. Everyone I'm asking has different approach.
I'm not quite sure I understand the question, but I mean, I would say if you're the PI and you have people doing good work for you, you should be the last author. Occasionally, I have people that are in my group that are quite senior postdocs, and they are doing more than me and being sort of directing the research, and I will let them be last author because I think they need that then, to get the next stage. I don't mind, I mean, they deserve it actually. But I mean, a lot of PIs, I think they wouldn't do that. They'd say, I want to be last author, even if the senior postdoc, is that?
Actually, what I'm asking is, in terms of, you've been in both of you in assessment panels. So when you're judging a candidate for a consolidator grant, and they're claiming that some publications have great ideas and I'm exploring them further, would you like to see publications with this academic as a last author or a second author? That's my question.
So I agree with Judy, okay? The only thing I want to add is that that is okay when you perhaps already, that can work in a lot of cases, but what happens if you're still, is your first postdoc and you have a lot of ideas that you've been contributing, but actually for whatever reason doesn't, warranty the analysis that Judy made. I think ERC is a lot more, it's a lot more nuanced than you need to be the last author. Yeah. There is a part where you need to explain the publications and your track record, and you need to explain what the contributions have been. And it's all about how you write that bit. I mean, you could say, look, I was working in this particular lab, and I was given the responsibility over these students. That's why I'm the second author, maybe, and not the last one. And I've been supporting that. And that idea, this and this and this was the contribution that I made. And you can see that because I left that lab and that line hasn't continued anymore. And this is what I'm doing in my new lab, right? So what I'm saying is it's all about the way you explain it as well. It's not just an order.
I'm not really sure that the panel members have a lot of time. The truth is they have a lot of time to read all that. I mean, obviously you hope they would. But they are looking that you have a good few papers, decent journals. Some people write a number of citations. We were just discussing it at the panel last week. Is it more important that they have science and nature papers, or is it more important they have a lot of citations? And I said, well, neither, because actually it depends on the research topic.
Yeah.
You maybe do something really old-fashioned, but it's actually really important, and it's emerging as a very important area.
Was that the starting grants?
Yeah, okay. And I think neither. It's just the quality of the work, and you have to have a few, quite a few. If you're a consolidator, quite a few papers, right? And you have to show independence somehow. So whether you do that by being first or last author, or if you're never first or last author, I think that people would wonder why. Thank you. I think you need to be first or last, in general.
Nat, sorry, there was a gentleman in the back who had a question first, sorry.
Yeah, I guess this is more specific, I guess all the ERC grants, but you guys talked specifically about the starting grants, a lot about the importance of track record versus project. I'm curious then, is writing this actually more like writing like a fellowship application, like something for the REng fellowships, where there is a project, but it's a smaller component of it, then there's a lot of other things you also have to respond to, or is it more like writing a fellowship than a research grant, or is it some combination or something completely different? And does that change between the two stages, the short grant and then the larger submission later on?
That's an interesting question.
Sorry, I'm not sure if I fully got it. So are you saying that if in addition to the grant, sort of the idea, there is also the aspects like dissemination, thought leadership, other aspects apart from that also get evaluated? Is that the question?
I guess I just haven't started writing it yet, but I've written both fellowship proposals and research grant proposals. So is it a lot more like writing the fellowship?
It's a fellowship.
Package, and then,
it's clearly a fellowship.
And then does that change between the two stages? Like, is at one point it's a lot more about the project now that they've already evaluated your...
You mean the B1 and the B2? No, the B1 is more like the helicopter view, where you're trying. I was saying before to Christina, the way I always think is, how do I convey this is what happened before my grant, and this is what is going to happen after my grant. So you need to convey the idea that there is a transformative idea and how this is going to be an inflection point. That's the first part. The second one is when you kind of reiterate a bit of that, but you also go and say, this is the way I'm going to do it, and this is the novelty on the particular elements, right? Yeah, so that's, but I don't know, Judy, if you see that way as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't really see it. I don't see an ERC grant as a fellowship. I see it as a grant, like a EPSRC grant, except a bit more broad, a bit more open-ended, a bit more groundbreaking and creative, So, as I said before, it's about saying, what is the problem to be solved? What's your unique solution, and why are you the person to do it? And if you're successful, what does success look like? What at the end will be the outcome? What's the big win of doing this work? I think those are the four things you have to keep in mind. And so the problem is you've got to submit the B1 and B2 at the same time, which is really hard. And it takes, to me, it took me a few weeks to write that, really dedicated effort to try and make it sound good, and and I would aim for B2 it's 15 pages. I would aim to write 10 and you'll write 15. So I'm going to write 10 and it'll be more. And B1 I'm going to write 3 and it'll be 5, Yeah. But you have to write them both, which takes a lot of time, especially the first round success rate's about 30%, or a bit under 30%. So 70% plus of people no one looks at their B2. They've only looked at the B1, you've written all this stuff. And use it again for another, if you don't get through, use it again for another proposal of some sort.
Yeah, it's not wasted.
So you're not given the part 2, to be very clear. So when you're reviewing, you're not shown the part 2.
Stage 1, yeah.
When you're in a stage 1. So you need to make sure that, and it's tricky because sometimes people want to know a bit how you are going to do it, to see whether they can trust what you're proposing. And also if you only stay at the level of the vision, but not saying what are going to be the contributions. Like, for instance, I work in biomedical engineering. So sometimes when we try to explain what's going to change in the world, we focus on the clinical problem or the question. But you also need to show them some of the engineering metal as well, right? which is part of the how you're going to do it. So you need to show sufficient in the first part of how that people understand that there is a novelty and a groundbreaking element there as well. But then you have a lot more detail in the second part to actually really spell it out.
You need to see a successful
Both at the same time. That seems weird, but thanks a lot for the...
You need to see a successful proposal.
Yeah.
The question is, how do you see a successful proposal? Does your institution have one that they can share with you? It's a personal thing, you know. So a lot of people ask me, can I see your proposal? And I just send it to them. Mm. Why wouldn't I? I mean, you know, I'll send you my proposal if you want.
That's an offer, thank you.
I mean, you know.
That's a good approach, we use it.
Yeah, why not?
Hi, Enterprise Fellow, submitting my first starting grant last year. My question is more about the interview. I wonder the panel if can talk more about there. So will it be like once you go into interview is everything, or will it just be a way to confirm or just a score you receive?
That's a good question.
Different panels work differently on their scoring, actually. So I would say it's very important, but only in the sense that, you know, be yourself. I mean, I would say be yourself, no BS, and, you know, answer the questions clearly and slowly and simply, and just, you know, that's the best way. And I think each panel, as I said, assesses things differently, is my experience. So, but it is important, that part.
How can you prepare for it?
So, okay, just to get you a bit of an idea what's going on. So we're invited, when you're in a panel, you go 2 times for a full week to Brussels, okay? The first time is to just sift through the proposals. I don't know, the panel it was like 147 proposals, and we needed to trim it down to about 60. And then the second time you go to about 15, 18, okay? The second part is where you have the interviews, and it's massively important. It's actually, when you are sitting on the interview, you say, I would never put my money in this one, and this is really good, right? Because on paper, everything sort of sticks, but when you see it, you realize whether there is lack of conviction, the type of questions you ask, and whether they hesitate. So how you deal with this? I would say practice a lot. There are some tools that there's a lot of tools nowadays that you can just record yourself. Do that many, many times and watch yourself explaining. You will get scared at the beginning, but it's helpful to do it. And then have a lot of people that are patient, that are willing to sit with you and give you comments. I think I did it like 15 times, the rehearsals. And I did it from, you know, colleagues to my wife and my kids. Because everybody gives you a different angle to it. And you have this few minutes where every angle will be potentially watched, and you need to be sort of scrutinized, I think, in that sense.
Thank you.
Short and simple, I would say. Don't say too much. Luckily, I wasn't interviewed. They changed the process. The advanced grants, they didn't used to be interviewed. So if I had to be interviewed, I probably wouldn't get it now. But anyway, I do feel for the people now that have to go through that process, because people spend a lot of time on it. What I see, it's like, oh, practicing the same few slides. It's so boring. You know, tweaking it. You know, going, oh, such a waste of time. But anyway.
And they changed the rules. It's 25 minutes, but for instance, the first time I think it was 7 and 18. 7 presentations. The second time was 10 and 15. The Q&A is very important as well. It's not just the presentation. It's being able to have snappy answers and know where they could come at you.
I would say that that's a similar experience to us with our fellowships, that when we see ranked proposals or fellows, then sometimes at the interview, what happened, the quality, what they seem like in the shortlisting is actually quite different from the interview. And so what happens at shortlisting has nothing to do with you know, it restarts again for interview, and you can really pull out the person who's going to be that ambassador for engineering, whose idea is really novel and excellent and worth funding. So.
And you,
I would say last time I was, the last year when we were doing the interviews, we could tell the ones that had been over-practiced, over-rehearsed and really polished, and we didn't like that. So we don't want that either. Panel doesn't like that. It's got to be kind of a bit more natural and spontaneous and relaxed, you know. Otherwise they know that it's just somebody else has told you what to say or something, you know.
Yeah, I think, but you're right. I mean, it's not, there's a difference between being practiced in the sense that you know your thing, right? And you have clear answers to, you know, sort of aesthetic, artificial, right? That also comes across. I mean, there are some presentations that you can see that is plastic, right? That is not real. And it's important to show enthusiasm for what you're doing. You know, you also see the people who their careers is hanging on that award, and others that, you know, they went there, but it's less critical maybe for them. And that is important as well when you evaluate, because you're trying to make a difference as much as distribute funding, right? You want to give it to people for whom that is going to be an important thing in their career.
I agree with that. The enthusiasm part is really important. Sort of a genuine enthusiasm, you know.
Right. Brilliant. More questions?
Hi, so I'm Raul Jason. I'm from the company Airbus Protect. I was formerly an UKIC fellow. So my question is about the consortium building, right? So I'd like to have a bit more understanding on what would be, you know, the key criteria that would be looked at for the consortium, right, when you're applying as a group.
Do you mean when you're constructing your proposal or when it's evaluated?
So the consortium members, for example, so if you if you're applying as a group, right? So what are the criteria that will be the most important as you select the members of the group, right? So is there anything that will stick?
As a coordinator, when you choose the partners you're going to apply with, is that what you're saying?
Exactly, and what the EU would be looking at, right? As this is, you know, the diversity of countries of the different participants.
So, yeah. So a lot of the consortia are built on the main PI existing relationships, right? So the basis of most consortia are based on that. From the EU's point of view, it would depend on the actual call. Some calls allow for more diversity in the types of partners, in the country of origin. So it would always be a bit interesting to have a careful read of the call text to see what they intend, what they need, what they want to see. Mostly consortia, you must have at least 3 partners from at least 2 or 3 European countries. But it can vary from call to call, and it depends also on the objective of the call. Some calls are look more at scientific relationships, and some other calls will make sure that there is a good balance between academic organizations, SMEs, and other types of organizations. So it really depends, and it really is important to read the call text carefully to see what is the intent and the impact that they wish to achieve with this particular call. But there is also, if you're looking at consortia to join, there is a function on the funding and tender portal where you can actually have a look at consortia that are looking for specific types of partners to complete their consortium and to make it more efficient to a particular call that they are looking to answer to. I hope that answered your question.
Do you think a lot of people look at those?
Well, I think maybe not the main, the big actors that are answering a lot of calls, but when you are a small SME, for example, that are looking to get involved in European funding, that is an actually very useful tool.
Okay, that's good.
And we actually, so there are a type of call that are called wide area calls that are looking at involving organizations from countries that are not as involved as some other major member countries of the European Union. And we do get from time regularly requests from some partners saying, oh, I've got this expertise, I would like to join your consortium. So it is something that is that can be useful for organizations that are not already involved in a lot of projects.
Alex?
Yeah, two things. One, that your question made me recall. People from industry, my understanding is, can apply to ERCs as well. So I remember having been in a panel where there was a particular proposal from an industry partner. That didn't go through, but it wasn't because it was an industry. It didn't go through because it wasn't strong. But I asked specifically, and they told me there are certain conditions that, as long as it's fundamental research and it works. So you might want to look at that even being in Airbus, you can apply. And the other thing, so Camille gave you sort of the more, let's call it the formal answer, which is the rules. But if I give you a more practical answer, you need to realize these projects are 3 to 5 years that you're going to be really a lot of time with a lot of people. So my suggestion, my rule is, first, you never write a collaborative grant with more than 2 other partners. You may have more partners in the proposal, but the key idea needs to come with 2, 3 people that write. You write a group proposal only when you have a cohesion in ideas, and this is normally small. And then you bring into that vision other partners to do very specific proposals. The worst thing you can do is call 15 friends across Europe and try then to see what you do together, because that's a recipe for disaster, okay? And then the other thing is you need to have people that that are tried and tested, because Camille explained something that is very, very important in these collaborative projects. The project management burden, the governance is massive, and it can be triplicated or multiplied by manyfold when you have the wrong partners, because you spend most of the time in those 2 partners that drive you crazy, basically, because they don't do their job, they don't deliver, they don't. So it's quite important to have people that you can trust. The way I think it's almost like a spin-off or a startup, a project. I mean, they give you maybe 5-10 million. That's normally a seed round in a company. And you're going to be working with those. So these are people that you want to be shareholders with, right? People that you really can trust. And you can have some new partners that you never work with. But don't try with all of them at the same time, because it can be very, very challenging.
Just as a follow-up on that, is it then advisable to have a company that is dedicated to the kind of administrative part of the grant?
So if you want to apply to a collaborative grant as a coordinator, that is very much important that you have the proper administrative support behind you. If you don't want to do admin the whole 3 to 5 years of your project, because this is, as Alex said, massive. So that's why people in my team are involved in such project. And actually, this is something that you can get funding for as part of your proposal, to have people that are dedicated to project management and monitoring the project, and monitoring not only the progress of activities, but also how budget is spent, if you are meeting your target, if you are delivering your deliverables when you said you would, because all of this you're going to have to report to the European Commission, and they're going to you're going to have to answer for all of this money that you have been given, right? So. Yeah, that is very much advisable. And at UCL, we have, the European Research Innovation Office. We have a whole PM project management team that is dedicated to actually support academics that are coordinating grants. And they need to come to us first when they actually write the proposal, for us to make sure that we include in that proposal the proper management support that they're going to need. And that's something that I'm pretty sure they are looking at when they're evaluating the proposal, if it's included a proper management structure and support to help the project be driven in the right direction.
Is it still 7% of the budget that can be allocated?
I don't think there's an actual percentage. It might be the case for some calls, but I'm not aware of that.
It used to be on that order, just to give you an idea. And that goes in...
I think for ERC grants, there is a cap on how much budget you can dedicate to project management, but not on collaborative grant. I don't think so.
And usually that can be recovered, if your industry can be recovered at 100%, as opposed of other things like demonstration and R&D that, you know, can be between 50 and 75%, depending whether you're a large corporate or just or an SME.
Thank you. I think we don't have any more time for questions, but the good news is that you can continue to have those conversations in the adjacent room. So there's going to be a networking reception, and our panel will be there. And anyone who has an ERC grant recipient has a little sticker on their badge so they can be identified. Please do fill out the feedback form that we send you afterwards. It's really important to us that we get your feedback. We want to try and run more of these webinars. We're very keen to support the community in the UK and help them engage and be successful with European funding. So it leaves me to thank very much the panel, Camille, Alex and Judith for their time today. And thank you all for your questions. See you all at the reception. Thank you.